The rain in Midgar never washed anything clean. It fell in slick gray sheets, carrying the grime of the upper plate and the scent of processed mako down into the Sector 7 slums. It was a rain that promised rust, not renewal. Tonight, however, it carried something else. A charge, an electric hum that made the teeth ache and the hairs on Cloudstrife's arms stand on end. He stood outside Seventh Heaven, the Buster Sword a familiar weight against his back, watching the sky. The perpetual gloom above the Plate City was glitching, stuttering like a damaged hologram. Patches of impossible blue, streaked with the violet of a twilight he'd never seen, tore through the Mako haze before snapping back to gray. Cloud? You're letting the chill in. Tifa's voice was a warm anchor in the unsettling night. She stood in the doorway of the bar, wiping a mug, her expression a mixture of concern and a similar deep-seated unease. Something's wrong, he said, his voice a low murmur. It was more than Shinra, more than any reactor issue. This felt fundamental, like the world itself was running a fever. Before Tifa could reply, a flicker of motion caught their eye in the alley. A small, frantic creature, all legs and green skin with a permanent, wide-eyed stare, zipped past. It stopped, struck a comical pose with its arms bent, and then vanished in a blur. Was that a cactuar? Tifa breathed, her knuckles white on the mug. Don't think they're native to the slums. Cloud deadpanned, his hand instinctively going to the hilt of his sword. The sky tore open, not with a bang, but with a silent, sickening rip. A fissure of pure white light bled into the night, and from it a figure fell, tumbling through the air before landing with a clang of heavy armor on the muddy street below. He was a knight, clad in impossibly ornate, polished steel inlaid with cobalt blue. He pushed himself to his knees, his horned helmet turning to survey the oppressive iron sky and the neon-lit squalor. By the light, he whispered, his voice muffled. What sorcery is this? This is not Baron. He removed his helmet, revealing a pale, noble face and long silver hair. He looked at Cloud and Tifa, his eyes wide with a confusion that mirrored their own. I am Cecil Harvey, Paladin of Baron. Where has the Dark Knight taken me? The fissure above did not close. Instead, more began to appear. All across the skyline, from the slums to the pinnacle of the Shinra Electric Power Company tower, reality was coming apart at the seams. Seventh Heaven became an impromptu nexus for the lost. Barrett Wallace, his gun arm whirring with agitation, had nearly shot a small, black-robed figure with a glowing yellow eye before Tifa intervened. The boy, if that's what he was, simply tilted his conical straw hat and squeaked, Do you have any Kupo nuts, Kupo? The bar was a chaotic tableau of clashing aesthetics. In one corner, a young man with a gunblade strapped to his hip leaned against the wall, his jaw tight and his gaze distant. His name was Squall Leonhardt, and his every monosyllabic response radiated a profound desire to be anywhere else. Talking to him was a young woman with heterochromatic eyes and a determined set to her jaw, clad in the uniform of a guardian. Lightning, she called herself, and she was already trying to formulate a strategy. Her mind a fortress against the encroaching madness. Auron, a grim-faced warrior in a wine-red coat with one arm concealed in his collar, stood near the door, his presence a silent, formidable wall. He had appeared alongside a vibrant young woman in a summoner's garb, Yuna, and a blonde, boisterous athlete named Titus, who was currently trying to explain the finer points of blitzball to a bewildered Barrett. So you hold your breath and kick a ball in a giant sphere of water? Barrett grumbled. Sounds like a damn fool way to get killed. It's the best sport ever. Titus insisted, his good cheer a stark contrast to the grim reality. The true nature of the crisis began to coalesce when a young woman with a long brown braid and a simple pink dress walked into the bar. Aerith Gainsborough. She wasn't an outworlder, but her eyes, the green of the life stream itself, saw more than anyone else. It's screaming, she said softly, her hand pressed to her chest. Everyone fell silent. The planet, not just our planet, all of them. They're being crushed together. The memories, the lives, the streams of every world, they're bleeding into one another. A lithe man with a prehensile tail, Zidane Tribal, who had been attempting to flirt with Tifa, paused. Bleeding? Sounds messy. Usually, when worlds get messy, there's someone with a big ego and a monologue pulling the strings. As if on cue, the televisions in the bar, which had been flickering with static, snapped to a clear image. It was the top floor of the Shinra Tower. and standing there, bathed in the sickly green glow of a massive materia shard, was a figure that made Cloud's blood run cold. Sephiroth. But he was different. Translucent energy, a chaotic storm of colors from a dozen alien skies, writhed around him. The Masamune in his hand seemed to cut not just the air, but the fabric of space itself. His voice, cold and beautiful, echoed from the speakers, yet it felt as if he were whispering in every one of their minds. Children of the Lifestream, visitors from forgotten shores, witnessed the genesis of a new reality. He gestured to the swirling vortex of worlds visible through the tower's windows. For too long, creation has been fractured. A symphony of discordant notes. I am merely the conductor, bringing them all to a final, glorious crescendo of oblivion. His silver hair drifted as he turned, a faint, condescending smile on his lips. My master, Chaos, has granted me this honor, to use the life stream of this world as the anchor, the focal point to unravel all others. Midgar will be the tombstone of existence. Cloud's knuckles were white on the hilt of his sword. He's using the planet's energy to power this collision. Lightning stepped forward, her expression resolute. Then the objective is clear. We sever the connection. We take that tower. Cecil nodded, donning his helmet. A righteous cause. My blade is yours. Squall pushed himself off the wall. Whatever. One by one, the disparate heroes of a dozen worlds found a single unifying purpose. Auron drew his massive blade. Tidus stretched, a grin on his face that didn't quite reach his eyes. Zidane produced a pair of daggers with a flourish. In the corner, a small mage in blue robes and a pointed hat, Vivi Ornitier, clutched his staff, the twin lights of his eyes burning with nervous determination. Tara Branford, a woman who knew the terror of uncontrollable power, let a soft green aura flicker around her hands. Let's mosey, Cloud said, the old phrase feeling heavier, more significant than ever before. The assault on the Shinra Tower was a symphony of impossible violence. The building, once a symbol of corporate oppression, had become a fortress of trans-dimensional horrors. Shinra troops, their minds warped by the chaotic energies, fought alongside behemoths from Cocoon and black waltzes from Gaia. Barrett's gun arm laid down a storm of lead, providing cover for Cecil, whose holy light shielded them from bolts of dark magic. For the sake of all worlds, the paladin cried, his sword cleaving through a mechanical monstrosity. Higher up, Squall and Lightning fought with a terrifying, synchronized efficiency. The gunblades' roar and the crackle of Lightning's Thundaga spells became a rhythm of destruction. They didn't speak, didn't need to. They were both soldiers, forged in the crucible of saving the world, and they understood the grim calculus of battle. The mages were the heart of the assault. From a secured position, Vivi's small form was a conduit for incredible power, chanting the arcane words that brought comets down within the tower's hangar bays. "Faraga!" he'd cry, his voice a high-pitched echo as a pillar of flame engulfed their enemies. Beside him, Terra's own magic was a wilder thing, a sea of devastating energy she guided with focused will. Yuna stood serene in the chaos. "Send them peace," she whispered, her staff glowing. The air shimmered, and from the ether, the majestic form of the Eidolon Ifrit burst forth, a being of living flame who met a summoned Shiva, twisted by Sephiroth's influence, in a cataclysmic clash of fire and ice. Auron moved like a force of nature, his blade a blur, cutting down foes with the finality of death itself. "This is your story," he'd grunted to Tidus, who, alongside a nimble Zidane, darted through the fray, their speed and agility creating openings for the heavy hitters. Tidus's blitz ace was a dizzying whirlwind of kicks and sword strikes, while Zidane's grand lethal was a flash of theatrical, deadly energy. Finally, there was Cloud. He fought with a cold, focused rage, the fight against Sephiroth, an old and bitter song in his soul. But this time, he wasn't alone. As he burst into the president's office at the tower's peak, it wasn't just Tifa and Barrett at his back. It was an army of legends. Sephiroth stood waiting, the chaos swirling around him. The very air was thick with the despair of dying worlds. "You cling to your fragmented realities," he mused, his voice dripping with pity, "to memories that will soon be meaningless." "Our memories are what make us," Cloud retorted, raising the Buster Sword. "Then let them die with you." Sephiroth screamed, and he moved, faster than sight. The clash was titanic. The Masamune met the Buster Sword in a shower of sparks that seemed to tear at reality. But Sephiroth was stronger, empowered by the Nexus of Chaos. He threw Cloud back, the ex-soldier skidding across the polished floor. Before Sephiroth could deliver the final blow, a shield of pure light erupted before him. Cecil stood firm, his paladin's faith an unbreakable barrier. Your darkness ends here, fiend. A volley of gunfire peppered Sephiroth's back as Barret bellowed, "Get a load of this." Lightning flashed past in a blur of rose-colored light, her gunblade leaving a dozen cuts along Sephiroth's flank. Squall followed, his Renzo Kukin a relentless series of precise, brutal strikes, culminating in the explosive concussion of Blasting Zone. Sephiroth staggered, a look of genuine surprise on his face. The chaotic energy around him flared, healing his wounds, but he was being overwhelmed. This wasn't a duel, this was an execution. Cloud saw his opening. He pushed himself to his feet, Mako energy coursing through him, the voices and strengths of his newfound allies echoing in his spirit. He charged, sword held high. "Terra! Vivi! Now!" Yuna called out. From below, two streams of raw power, one of pure, primal magic, the other of focused, devastating fire, lanced upwards, striking Sephiroth and momentarily pinning him. Cloud leapt, the Buster sword glowing with the blue light of a limit break. He was no longer just Cloud Strife, ex-soldier. He was the focal point of a dozen heroes' hopes, the tip of a spear forged from worlds he'd never known. "For everyone," he roared. The Omnislash began. A torrent of 16 strikes, each empowered by a collective will. The final overhead blow struck the Masamune, and with a scream of tortured metal and dying magic, both the legendary blade and the man who wielded it shattered into a million motes of malevolent light. A profound silence fell over the rooftop, broken only by the whistling wind. Sephiroth was gone. The chaotic energy receded, and the portal of swirling worlds above the tower stabilized, shrinking slightly but not closing. Midgar was safe, but the crisis was far from over. They gathered at the broken window, looking down at the city. The rain had stopped. For the first time, a few unfamiliar stars peeked through the Mako clouds, stars from other skies. He was just a herald, Cecil said, his voice heavy, a servant of this chaos. Aerith stepped forward, her hand outstretched as if she could touch the fractured sky. He's still out there, in the places between. He's pulling the strings, watching, and on other worlds, turned upside down just like ours, more heroes are fighting. I can feel them. They looked at each other. The paladin, the guardian, the seed mercenary, the summoner, the black mage, the thief, the athlete, the warrior monk, the gunner, the ronin, the half-esper. Strangers, all of them. Exiles, orphans of a cosmic storm. Lightning's gaze was hard as steel. We stopped one. We'll stop the others. We'll find this chaos and we will end him. It wasn't a promise. It was a statement of fact. They were an impossible alliance, a pantheon of mismatched legends standing on the precipice of a broken world. Their own stories may have ended, but here in the grime and neon of Midgar, a new, far grander fantasy had just begun.